Yo peoples, Kyushu92 here as we celebrate the second to last day of the One Piece 20th anniversary and also the 19th day of the 20 for 20 challenge that's been going around. Today we're going to be talking about yet another mystery, but we've seen so much of it that we're starting to, I guess some have started to forget that this item is still an enigma in the world of One Piece. Today we're going to be talking about devil fruits. Now, devil fruits themselves, they're still a mystery. Like, we've seen so many of them, so many different types, and there's 3 subcategories for it, but we'll get to that. We've seen it so many times, yet we don't know what they really are. We just know that there are different types of fruits that can imbue people with different abilities. And as far as we know, there's only one person who has discovered the power behind this and has even learned to incorporate it into different things, Dr. Vegapunk. And he's the only person so far that has fully understood what they truly are and how they work. Of course, we haven't gotten to Dr. Vegapunk yet, but I have the feeling that after this Whole Cake Island arc is done, we may even get a glimpse of him, even if it's just a short chapter. I just feel like Vegapunk is coming really soon. So, devil fruits themselves, they're a very rare item in the Grand Line, and many powerful people and some not powerful people have the abilities of some of these fruits. And these fruits in general are divided into 3 categories. One is Paramecia, or Paramecia, or Paramythia if you're going by the English dub, but I prefer Paramecia. Paramecia are the type of fruits that imbue the users with very superhuman or beyond superhuman capabilities, or even abilities that allow them to produce things that are not normal. A good example would be Luffy, who has his entire body turned into rubber and also causes his body to react elastic-like in his entirety. And you have Doflamingo, who's able to produce strings out of his body, and he can use these for both defensive, offensive capabilities, and their exact limits are still unknown. And another example would be Buggy the Clown. He's able to slice his body up into different pieces, and therefore it makes Buggy the only person who is immune to being sliced by anything. Because if you noticed in Marineford, he was sliced through the middle by Mihawk, and he's still alive. Whether Mihawk was actually using Haki or not is still unknown, but Buggy is pretty much immune to being sliced anywhere due to his devil fruit abilities. Secondly, we have Zoan types, and this has its own separate type in its own category. Regular Zoans and Mythical Zones. Regular Zoans pertains to people who are able to turn their bodies into different animals and thus also become hybrids. You have human, hybrid, and then full-on animal. And if this is used by an animal, then they may even become humans themselves, such as the case as Tony Chopper, who was just a regular reindeer at one point, but he ate a Zoan-type fruit that allowed him to gain human intellect and human features and human capabilities, such as being able to speak to normal people and also being able to speak to animals as well. So he's like the bridge between worlds. And then you have the Mythical Zoan types, which are Zoan fruits that are even rarer than the next category I'm going to talk about. Mythical Zoans are creatures that are otherwise thought to be myths and legends, such as Marco the Phoenix, who is able to turn into a phoenix, which is essentially, and this grants him abilities that pretty much puts him in all 3 categories. In the his abilities to regenerate in his phoenix form puts him in the same category as a Paramecia, because that's a superhuman ability. His ability to turn into a phoenix in general puts him in the capabilities of a Zoan. And his abilities, being able to produce blue flames, which can heal his body, it allows objects to pass through him as if he's completely made of fire itself, sort of puts him in the same category as a Logia type. So that makes Marco the Phoenix a very unique Zoan that has capabilities that reach into all 3 categories. Another example of a mythical Zoan would be Diaz Drake, who has the ability to turn himself into pretty much a green T-Rex. And he's able to access both a hybrid form and a full-on Tyrannosaurus Rex form. Another example would be Jack the Drought, who can turn into a giant woolly mammoth. and we don't know what his hybrid form looks like because we only seen him in his human form, and we only seen him in his whole woolly mammoth form. But we do know that the capabilities of a zone user are augmented by the capabilities of a zone user's physical capabilities are augmented by their fruits. A good example would be Rob Lucci, who's already a capable fighter in his own right, but as soon as he has his leopard type zone fruit, his physical capabilities are drastically increased, even making him far more deadlier than he was before, especially when he goes in his leopard human hybrid form, which is which makes him one of the few people to bring Luffy to the brink of death due to his pure brute strength, because of the added capabilities of his leopard type devil fruit. And lastly, the last category in fruits in general we have are Logia types. Logia types are exceedingly rare, though not as rare as Mythical Zone. Logia types allow people to turn into different elements, such as the case of Smoker, who can turn into smoke. And the three admirals before the time skip, Admiral Akainu, Admiral Aokiji, Admiral Kizaru, who can turn into magma, ice, and light, respectively. Now, the capabilities of a Logia type user is pretty much, they're very destructive. The only power that is considered just as strong as a Logia type is the Quake fruit. That was once used by Whitebeard, is now in the hands of Blackbeard. Logia type users that can turn into their respective elements have a very wide capability of being able to let objects pass through their bodies when they're hit, especially if a user has trained themselves to turn into their respective fruit elements on reflex. This makes it very difficult to even combat them at all, such as the case of the admirals. None of them are able to get hit by people unless these certain individuals are using haki, but everybody else can pretty much never lay a finger on them. Such is the case of being able to train on reflex. Crocodile and the three admirals before the time skip have trained themselves to be able to turn into the elements on reflex, like the example of Crocodile getting shot all over his body during the escape of and fell down, or having his head decapitated by Vivi, or having his head completely sliced off by Doflamingo in the Marineford War, and they are able to reform themselves with little to no discomfort at all. And in the case of the admirals, all of their abilities are exceedingly destructive, such as the case of Admiral Akainu. He has the magma fruit, which allows him to pretty much produce lava and magma, and this ability has both concussive and explosive properties, which means that he can turn his body into lava, tunnel underground. Anything that hits his body is melted on contact due to how much high heat lava actually has. And if he shoots it into the air, like countless magma shots out of his hands into the air, they can come down in the form of giant fist-shaped volcanic rocks that have extremely explosive properties. And it also makes his fruit the only one that can combat Ace's fruit, because Akainu's fruit is on a level higher than Ace's. Even though they're in the same category as heat-based Logia type fruits, Akainu's is on a higher level than Ace because magma can literally burn out fire. So, in the case of Aokiji, he has the ice fruit, which allows him to pretty much turn into ice, pretty much. And this has an extremely strong ability, as when he touches water, such as when he met up with the Straw Hats for the first time and froze the ocean. He not only froze the ocean for a great distance away, all the way into the adjacent ocean that everyone was trying to get, adjacent island that everyone was trying to get to, but also completely froze and killed a Sea King that was about to pretty much try and eat him. And the only people who have been able to escape and break out of being covered and frozen in ice by Aokiji is Whitebeard and Doflamingo. Whitebeard on account of his Quake powers, and Doflamingo on account of, I guess, him being Doflamingo. Don't know. So Aokiji has exceedingly powerful abilities. Another example of Aokiji's abilities was during the Marineford War, where he froze two giant tsunamis, two giant waves that Whitebeard caused to almost envelop Marineford, and he completely froze them both to the point where nothing could break it except for Luffy and the crew when they were up top on one of the waves and they fell off towards Marineford. And the last one that we noticed from the admirals is Admiral Kaiser, who has the glint fruit, which allows him to turn into light. Now, this fruit entirely, it could be regarded as one of the fastest devil fruits, but by its user, it could be because he's exceedingly slow, so we never really see its true potential. But what we do know is that the user of that fruit can move at light speed. Now, in Kizaru's case, he takes an exceedingly long time to move at light speed, but when he does move, he's, like, on you, like that. Even to the point where he proclaims Luffy's gear second to be too slow compared to him, at least in the pre-time skip form of Luffy. And this also comes to the part where Kizaru's abilities have both explosive and piercing properties. He can shoot beams, light beams and lasers out of his body as a whole, some that can pierce straight through people and some that have such explosive capabilities that they are capable of completely uprooting and toppling over a mangrove tree on Sabaody Archipelago. And as we've seen, the mangrove trees are extremely big. And in his case, he can produce beams of such magnitude that anyone who's hit by them is pretty much down for the count, except for Luffy, who managed to somehow survive being hit by one of those beams as a whole. And a lot of his abilities are based off of the great treasures of Japan, such as the Yatano Kagami, Yasakani no Magatama, and the Amaro Murakumo. Amano Murakumo. Yeah, there we go. Tongue-tied. But the abilities of Logia type users is they can be used to such an extent that they could drastically change the type of environment that they're in, such as the way of the 10-day battle between Kuzan and Kainu for the position of Fleet Admiral. Punk Hazard was like a normal island before they showed up, but after they did their 10-day battle, they completely and permanently changed the climate on the island, where one side of the island is forever frozen and covered in an everlasting blizzard with ice and what have you, and another side is always hot, which is always on fire due to the clash of those two fruits in general. Because they were pushed to the limit on that fight, they drastically changed the environment permanently on that island. Now, one rare exception to the Logia type is the Yami Yami no Mi. At one point, it was considered to be a Paramecia type due to just what it was, but it's now known as a Logia type. And it's unique in the way that it doesn't allow its user to turn into its element, which is pretty much darkness, and it has a secondary effect of gripping, crushing gravity. It doesn't allow, and this was eaten by Marshall D. Teach, aka Blackbeard. And the thing is, the drawback behind it is it doesn't allow Blackbeard to let things pass through him in a way of letting bullets or attacks pass through his body, because he can't turn his body into darkness. But and also it causes his body to take twice as much damage as that of a normal person. And in Blackbeard's case, pretty much all the moves that he gets inflicted on, all of the attacks that hit him, pretty much has him in more dire pain than that of a normal person. But the trade-off for this is, whenever he touches another fruit user, regardless of what type they have, it completely nullifies their abilities. And also, through an unknown method, he was able to obtain another fruit, which was Whitebeard's Quake fruit. How he did this, I don't know, but I really speculate that it has something to do with his dark fruit. So that's the only exception to the Logia type rule, as Blackbeard is the one rare case where the Logia type user doesn't turn into their respective elements. Now, these fruits as a whole, they're still a mystery, but like I said before, Vegapunk, I hope I said it before, yeah, Vegapunk so far, or if I haven't, I'll just recap. Dr. Vegapunk is the only person who knows the mechanics behind these fruits, and has even used this to engineer different weapons that will incorporate these fruit properties in certain machines and weapons, such as the way of the Pacifista. In the Pacifistas case, they're capable of shooting beams out of their hands and mouth thanks to Vegapunk reverse engineering Kizaru's fruit and taking what he learned and putting it into the Pacifistas. And he also, I believe, it also accounts for Spandam's sword. I can't remember its name. Siegfried. I want to say Siegfried. His elephant sword, which can turn into an elephant or elephant sword hybrid, but it was just originally a sword. So how he was able to make an inanimate object take on the properties of a fruit and thus cause it to become alive, we still don't know. But Vegapunk is the only person so far who has been capable of fully understanding what these fruits are and even incorporating them into everyday objects. And as a little bit before I go, because I'm really running out of time, there is an encyclopedia out there in the world that lists all the known fruits in the world, and the only time we've seen it is when Marshall D. Teach used it to find out what the Yami Yami no Mi was, memorize its size and shape and what kind it was, get on Whitebeard's ship, and steal it from his crewmate Thatch. And another one is when Sanji used a similar encyclopedia that was in the hands of the Vinsmokes and find out what the Suke no Mi was, which allows the user to turn invisible, which was Sanji's goal, so that way he could turn invisible and peep on girls. You perv. But that's as far as we know about fruits in general. Let me know what your favorite fruit is. I'm pretty sure I asked this at a previous time. But hope you all enjoyed the video. Sorry it was so long, and I will see you all in the last video. I got something special planned, so stay tuned. So, as always, I will see you in the next video. And once again, as always, later, peoples!